Hello, everyone. Today I wanted to talk about part two in where I am at with my case against evolution and trying to remove it from the school curriculum as it is a religion unless evidence is presented. So, my uh, Dean of Science I talked to, he sent me the experiment I covered in the last video, and I had an investigator who was working on trying to help me get somewhere with this, and he had told me that my claim was different from the ones that he deals with because what he deals with are like individual cases of students that have maybe like a discrepancy in their grade or something, or some sort of issue with the teacher. So he said that this is kind of a different topic. So he did send me a couple links to I think it's the National Library Association, and I asked the librarian, and they sent me to here. This is the National Science Foundation, and I got to the link of their staff directory. And so they have on here, they have a couple people and a lot of phone numbers, a few emails. And so I've tried calling a lot of these phone numbers, and I've tried asking for evidence of abiogenesis. And I left them an email. I kind of explained a little bit about why I'm looking for abiogenesis for the paper that I'm going to be working on for school, and I left them my phone number and an email, and I've tried calling a lot of these numbers. Up here I've called Karen, and I've called James, and then I've also called I think this top number here, Directorate for Biological Sciences. Actually, I don't think I've called that one because it's a directorate. But I've called this Division of Molecular and Cellular Biosciences office, Division of Biological Infrastructure, Division of Integrative Organismal Systems, Division of Environmental Biology. I've tried calling these numbers, and there's actually a couple more I pulled up on my phone to get more numbers. And so I've tried calling these people and left them an email. I've also emailed James, and I've emailed Karen, and I've only gotten one response. It was one email. There was no exchange after that, and it was from Karen, and she had told me that she sent me what she called an excellent article pertaining to abiogenesis. And so this is what she sent me. She sent me the origins of cellular life. So I wanted to go over that. It's kind of a long article, so this might get a little lengthy, but there are some things in here that are ridiculous. Oh my goodness. So I've also tried to contact this National Center for Science Education. The guy that replied didn't want to help me. He said that he can't help me because it's something to do with schoolwork. But I just told him I was looking for evidence. But these people, I think, they love evolution. And so I don't think he liked me saying that it turned out to be that evolution seems kind of religious, or that it requires faith. So anyway, I tried contacting these people as well and gotten a hold of other organizations. So let's get to this article here, The Origins of Cellular Life. So all life, the abstract says all life can be naturally classified into cellular life forms and virus-like selfish elements, the latter being fully dependent on the former for their reproduction. Cells are reproducers that not only replicate their genome but also reproduce the cellular organization that depends on semi-permeable, energy-transforming membranes and cannot be recovered from the genome alone. Under the famous dictum of Rudolf Virchow, omnis cellula e cellula. In contrast, simple selfish elements are replicators that can complete their life cycles within the host cell, starting from genomic RNA or DNA alone. The origin of the cellular organization is the central and perhaps the hardest problem of evolutionary biology. There you go. Continuing, I'm going to interject here and there and say a couple things and try to do like a commentary while I read it. Of course, as always, if you ever have anything you want to say or add or correct me if I'm wrong or anything, please feel free to do so. I really like the interaction. So, back to the article. I argue that the origin of cells can be understood only in conjunction with the origin of evolution of selfish genetic elements. A scenario of precellular evolution is presented that involves cohesion of the genomes of the emerging cellular life forms from primordial pools of small genetic elements that eventually segregated into hosts and parasites. I further present a model of the coevolution of primordial membranes and membrane proteins, discuss protocellular and noncellular models of early evolution, and examine the habitats on the primordial earth that could have been conducive to precellular evolution and the origin of cells. So this is a lot of like could be, that could have, things like that. So not observation, which is what I was asking for. It's very bizarre to be asking the science advisor for the National Science Foundation for observation and get something that literally right here says cells have never been observed starting from the beginning. So that, like, evolution is considered a theory, and in science you have something like a theory, you have like basic electrical theory. When you do this and you follow this setup here, this will work. This is a theory, this has evidence, it's repeatable, it's been observed. This is a theory, this works, okay? Evolution is dependent on inference and appeals to authority and all of these types of philosophical things because it has no observation. It has no empirical data. It can only infer. Back to the article here. The cellular world. All self-sufficient life forms on Earth share the cellular organization. Myriads of parasites are also cellular but exploit the resources of other cellular organisms to reproduce. Some of these parasites go through their entire life cycles inside other cells. The second vast empire of life forms consists of viruses and other selfish elements that possess genetic but not biochemical autonomy and fully depend on their cellular host for their reproduction. I believe that the discussion of the origin of early evolution of cells is particularly appropriate for the celebratory anniversary issue of Anton van Leeuwenhoek. Although van Leeuwenhoek might not have been the discoverer of cells sensu stricto, he definitely discovered unicellular organisms and the remarkable diversity of the microbial world, the origin of which is the theme of the present article. The simplest known cells are exquisitely organized agglomerates of intricate macromolecular complexes. The two classes of such complexes that define the cellular state and cleanly separate cells from virus-like entities are membrane-embedded energy transformations and molecular transport systems, and 2. translations systems that make all the proteins required for the cell function. A fundamental and striking feature of cells is that the formation of a cell de novo has never been observed. So, hold on real quick, just so we're making sure. De novo. Definition. Over again, anew, from the beginning. So we've never observed a cell from the beginning, exactly what I was asking for observation of. Sends me an article that says we have never observed the formation of a cell from the beginning. According to the famous dictum of Rudolf Virchow, omnis cellula e cellula, i.e. new cells are generated exclusively from old ones. Exclusively from old ones. By various forms of division or budding, using the definitions of Zathmary and Maynard Smith, cells are reproducers rather than replicators, i.e. cellular reproduction is not reducible to genome replication in contrast to the reproduction of many simple selfish elements. Indeed, all advances of synthetic biology notwithstanding, we are far from being able to generate a cell using genomic DNA alone. Whereas, for example, positive strand RNA viruses or plasmids can be reproduced indefinitely starting from pure RNA or DNA. So they're far from being able to generate a cell using DNA. They still cannot create life. Just because you have DNA is like a strand on an element or chemical level. DNA is a strand of things, but those things, when they're lined up in that way alone, doesn't give them information. Genes and DNA carry information which is not found in a particular arrangement of amino acids. Is my commentary on that. Back to the article. The simplest free-living prokaryotes include autotrophs, encompassed about 1,200 genes. Attempts to reconstruct the gene set for a minimal cell by combining comparative genomic data on gene conservation and biological considerations yield estimates of about 250 to 300 genes. Numerous intracellular parasite bacteria with gene repertories of the size of even smaller indeed have been isolated. Some of the smallest bacteria in this category, with less than 200 genes, have lost genes for certain components of the translation system that might be on their way to becoming organelles. So they're kind of saying that simpler bacteria are probably trying to become organelles, because there's a theory that the mitochondria in cells is actually a bacteria that got swallowed up by another bacteria and they had a symbiotic relationship. That's another topic for another time. Endosymbiotic organelles, most notably, back to the article, most notably mitochondria and chloroplasts, arguably represent the penultimate stage of cellular degradation. These organelles retain their own genomes, albeit very few genes, with their own internal translation systems and their own membranes, although substantially modified from the ancestral bacterial membranes. How do you know? In particular, the organelle membranes are equipped with protein import systems that deliver into the organelle the protein products of former endosymbiont genes that have been transformed to the nuclear genome of the host. Thus, the organelles remain cell-like reproducers, but most of their protein encoding capacity has been relegated to the genome of a distinct reproducer, the host cell. The ultimate stage of cellular degradation and derivatives of the mitochondria, such as hydrogenosomes and mitosomes that have lost genomes and translation systems but retain the membrane. Although the proteins required for the function of these organelles are encoded in the nucleus, synthesized by the cytoplasmic translation system, and transported into the organelle, Thus, in this case, the membrane seems to be the only remaining entity that maintains the cell-like status of organelles. So basically, because something has a membrane, it's probably another cell within a cell, even though membranes are kind of like entryways. They're doors. You can go in or out. It's so that things aren't being... Membranes are there. I believe the creationists would say that a membrane exists because it allows things in and keeps things out. Okay, so there are strong indicators that all cellular life forms are infected by viruses or virus-like selfish elements, and the genome of most cells contain multiple integrated genomes of such elements. Strikingly, viruses are the most abundant biological entities on Earth in terms of number of particles, total mass, and genetic complexity. Theoretical modeling studies suggest that selfish elements inevitably parasitized on independent replicators since the very early stages of evolution, once the replicators have reached certain minimal complexity. Quoting Carl Woese, the origin of cells is the greatest of evolutionary problems. These people know that this is a problem. The greatest of evolutionary problems is the origin of cells. This here is a problem. The greatest problem. In a sense, all of biological evolution that occurred after the origin of cells, or more precisely cells within their associated selfish elements, is routine compared to that monumentous breakthrough. So they're saying, oh, we could possibly work with cells changing after we get that cell, but we don't actually have that first cell forming, which is required. You can't go anywhere if you don't start. You can't build a theory on nothing if your first level of if you have a 10-story house and that first story of the house is not touching the ground, it's gonna fall. So let's see, it's like the Roadrunner when he goes over the cliff, he looks down and then falls. Like that house can't just stand up without that first. So or another way, like, because it's a tree of life, if you don't have that seed, what tree can grow? Let's see, back to the article, given the intricacy of the molecular machinery of the simplest cells, the lack of any observations on cell origin except from other cells creation, and the lack of any, that's what the Bible says, kinds will reproduce after their own kind. Back to the article. And the lack of any apparent intermediate stages in the evolution of cells, the origin of cell engenders the ominous specter of irreducible complexity. Of course, this only means that we might still lack the essential data and theoretical models, let alone experimental approaches to reconstruct the early stages of cellular evolution. In the rest of this article, I attempt to make the most of the few relevant observations and ideas that are at our disposal. So this last bit right here is there's a lot in this. So he talks about the lack of any observation of cell origin, which is not science. Observation is part of the method. So except from other cells, which is what the Bible would say. The lack of any apparent intermediate stages in the evolution of cells, that's kind of a funny one because creationists will mention about transitional fossils and things like that. So there's no intermediate stages. The origin of cells engenders the ominous specter of irreducible complexity. I think Darwin himself said if there was any irreducibly complex thing, it would disprove his theory, his idea. It's not a theory. Don't say evolution is a theory thinking evolution is an idea. It is an idea, but in science, a theory means that it has evidence. So it's just an idea. But Darwin himself said irreducible complexity would dispute his hypothesis. And this is true as well, to give to the other side. they might still lack the essential data, theoretical models, and experiments to reconstruct the early stages of life. This is true. This is true. They could get better technology and just not have it right now. But that's the whole point, is don't teach you until you can verify as a fact. It's a belief and it's a religion, so don't teach it as a fact until you can actually do it. That would be like me saying I have perpetual energy discovered, but I don't have anything to prove it or to show for it or anything. I just say I discovered it. So we have to teach that perpetual energy has been discovered and is a fact. No, you have to have your proof, and then you can go with it where you will, or your evidence or whatever. If you want to, don't call it proof. Okay, if you can provide your evidence, then you can go somewhere. If you can load up your cart, then you can have your horse pull it. I think so the rest of this article, I'm thinking this video is getting a little bit long. And this article is a bit lengthy, so I think what I'm going to do is probably make a part 2 to this part 2 and go over some of this. But like this whole article, this whole thing is full of all of these contradictions and things, and we believe and suspect and possibly, and they don't have any evidence. And this was sent to me, this article was sent to me from here, from the science advisor of the National Science Foundation. This is what they send. This is when they're pressed to the wall, this is what they are able to provide. So this should be very alarming to anyone who believes in evolution. You don't have a start. We're not even going to get into the transition of plant and animal cells coming from a bacteria, because you have to get that first. To anyone who's trying to go against someone who believes in evolution, don't go away from abiogenesis until they can provide it. Because my Dean of Science and the National Science Foundation, they can't keep pressing abiogenesis. If you don't have a start, then they have to admit that it's a religion. They have to admit that they take it on belief that this is their origin belief. This is their naturalistic religion. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, and go over. This evolution is not a theory, and people struggle. The National Center for Science Education, they don't want to talk. National Science Foundation, talk to your Dean of Science. This is evolution is very destructive, and it's subconsciously, not all people that believe in evolution are bad, of course, but some people really run with it and do some horrible things, and it justifies a lot of promiscuous behavior, so to speak. So there's a lot of good reason to get rid of evolution and not teach it as science. And I think, the biggest one is that it's the opposition to the Bible. They want evolution so that there is no Bible in the classroom, which I don't say should be taught, but I shouldn't say in the classroom, so that people don't consider the Bible. Because evolution and the Bible are opposed to one another entirely. 180% diametrically, 180 degrees diametrically opposed, 100%. So they are different. So that's I wanted to go, so we got down to here. So I'll make another video going into more of this. Still a pretty long article, so maybe even a part 3, but I wanted to go over this for now. Let me know what you think. If you want to give it a read, go for it. I think I should be able to post the link in the description for this article. Let me know what you think, and thank you for your time and listening. Hopefully, if you have anything you want to add or anything, please do. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your day or night. God be with you and your families.